Animation. I think it's safe to assume that we've all seen some sort of animation in our lives. From classical hand-drawn animation to motion graphics, animation can come in many different forms, but what are the main forms of animation and how do they differ from one another? Welcome to the series that intends to answer these questions so you too can understand the many forms of animation. What is 3D animation? Well, the basic definition of 3D animation is manipulating objects in a three-dimensional environment to create the illusion of movement. 3D animation shares the same basic principle as any other animation technique, that being multiple images are taken and played back at a minimum of 12 frames per second to create movement. However, unlike cell animation that uses hand-drawn images, 3D animation uses computer-generated imagery. There are many steps involved in creating a 3D animation, which we will now be going over. First of all comes the concept and the storyboards. This is pretty much a given as you need to convey your ideas before having a team of people work on it. Next comes the process of creating the 3D models. This means creating models of props, environments and characters using special software such as Autodesk Maya or Blender. When creating a 3D model, you want to make sure you have a good topology, which basically refers to how structured the model is. For example, a messy topology will be a lot harder to animate compared to a clean one. Next comes the texturing, and this basically means adding colour, designs or textures to your model, and these textures are just simply 2D images that are overlaid onto the 3D model. If you create a character or any object that has a lot of movement, then you need to move on to the next step, which is rigging and skinning the model. Rigging basically means creating a controllable skeleton for a 3D character so that it can be animated. Skinning refers to the act of attaching the actual model to the rigged skeleton so that the model can be manipulated using the rig. You might have guessed that the next phase is to actually animate your models. This can be done in different ways, for example keyframe animation, which is when an object is manipulated on a frame-by-frame basis, or by placing objects on splines, which means setting a certain path that the object will follow. Motion capture is also an option when it comes to 3D animation, and this means recording an actual person's movements and translating it onto your 3D model. After this is done, you will need to light your scene, and this is just as essential as lighting in real life. Good lighting can make a 3D scene look more realistic, whereas bad lighting can ruin all your work by making certain textures look hard or flat. Next, you need to actually set up your camera angles. Unlike real life, physical limitations don't exist, meaning you can set up a camera wherever you want. After all this is done, you then have to render your scene, and this is usually the end of the 3D production pipeline, but not the end of the overall production pipeline. Camera placement, lighting choices, and the handling of special effects like fluids or gases are all a factor when trying to create a good final render of a scene. These final renders are then brought into a compositing program such as Adobe After Effects, where they are edited, touched up, and also have special effects added. The music and sound effects are then added to add extra depth and set the mood for the animation. The final stage is to edit everything together so that everything is in synchronization. And that's it, you have yourself a 3D animation. And that concludes this episode on 3D animation. Join us next time when we'll be looking at stop motion. Thanks for watching this episode, and we hope to see you in the next one.